All right, Buffalo Bills fans, welcome to the latest episode of The Walkthrough. I am your host, Anthony Marino. Happy to be here with you once again, talking everything Buffalo Bills. And here we are, another playoff matchup against the Denver Broncos following last week's victory over the Jacksonville Jaguars. Happy to be back here with you once again, talking about Bills football one more week, right? Things kind of keep moving forward. And, of course, we wait to see what happens in the game later today. A little bit different setup for us this week. Talking to you on game day, right, with the Saturday kickoff at 4:30 on CBS, recording this Saturday morning and kind of getting with all of you and talking about what will be taking place later in the day for the Bills. So certainly will be an exciting day. Not thrilled the fact that, you're playing against the Broncos. They're coming off a bye, and you as the Bills are playing on a short week following last Sunday's game and having to play on Saturday. But listen, it's the playoffs. That's the way things work out. It is what it is. And, complaining about it, it's not going to get me anywhere. It's not going to get you anywhere. So listen, let's talk about the game today and have a little bit of fun and hope for the best when it comes to our Buffalo Bills. Of course, all of our shows here at the Overreaction Sports Network, brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. We appreciate their support each and every week. And let's pull up the latest, because I know there was some movement as it relates to the lines. Right now, the Buffalo Bills, according to FanDuel, 1.5-point underdogs, and the over-under set at 46.5. And I say some movement because when that line first opened, just like last week against the Jaguars, the Buffalo Bills were the open favorite, right? They were 1.5-point favorite against the Jags, and that flipped to being a 1.5-point underdog. Same thing has happened this week. The initial lines had the Bills as a 1.5-point favorite. Now they are underdogs heading into today's matchup. So as we kind of take a look at that, just a little bit interesting, right? When you're the team that's on the road to open as a favorite, but then you see that flip taking place. It's going to be a good matchup. It's going to be a good game, and certainly one that we're all looking forward to. As we do each and every week, let's talk about the injury report. The one different thing is we have a little bit more insight as it comes to some elevations because, again, the game is taking place in just a few hours. But let's run through it anyway just to kind of give you that recap, and then we'll kind of get into some of the more details with the activations that have taken place in advance of the game. So for this, Josh Allen, he was limited on Tuesday, but a full practice participant on Wednesday and Thursday. No game status for him, but the injury list, right? I mean, we got the foot, the knee, the right finger. He was certainly banged up against the Jaguars last week, and let's hope that he is as healthy as can be heading up against a difficult Denver Broncos defense. Terrell Bernard, one to keep an eye on. He is listed as questionable with the calf. He was limited in practice all week. AJ Epinesa with a neck injury was limited all week in practice, but no game status for him. Should be good to go, but certainly something to keep an eye on. Maxwell Harrison, no surprise here, did not practice all week. He has been listed as out. Maybe if the Bills can get the victory today, he could be back and able to play heading into the AFC Championship game, but that's getting way, way ahead of ourselves. Damar Hamlin was a full practice participant all week. He's listed as questionable, but spoiler alert, he was not activated, so he will not be playing in today's game, but good to see him getting some full practice back in. And again, what can happen in the coming weeks should the Bills be fortunate enough to get a victory later today. One that everyone's keeping an eye on, Ty Johnson, the running back with the ankle. Again, did not practice on Tuesday or Wednesday. He was a limited participant on Thursday, is listed as questionable as of this time. No idea what will happen with him, and we'll find out when the game day inactive list is shared later on this afternoon. Dalton Kincaid, again, with the knee and calf, limited all 3 days in practice. Kind of a you could probably say Dalton Kincaid is going to be limited in practice every single day for like the rest of his career, at least it seems like. But no game status for him, so he will be good to go. Matt Milano was limited with an ankle all 3 days of practice, but no game status, so nothing to see there. Oliver, back on the practice field, limited all 3 days. Listed as questionable. We'll talk about him being added to the 53-man roster in just a little bit, but certainly some reinforcements arriving for the defensive line, and hopefully we'll get to see him on the field in this matchup. Jordan Poyer, Sean McDermott referenced him as being week to week. He did not practice all week. He has been listed as out. In addition to that, right, kind of a full gamut of stuff with his right quad and right calf. Kicker Matt Prater, he did not practice on Tuesday, put in a full practice on Wednesday, limited on Thursday, but no game status for him. He looked good last week, so knock on wood that everything will be good to go there. Defensive end Greg Rousseau with the back, limited all 3 days in practice, but no game status for him. Curtis Samuel also back practicing, full practice participant all 3 days this week. He is listed as questionable. And finally, linebacker Shaq Thompson was on the injury report with a neck. He was a limited participant on Wednesday and Thursday, but no game status for him. And that runs through the Buffalo Bills injury report. And I kind of chuckle with this because, gosh, each week there are so many names here, and some it's like nothing to see, right, if they've got no game status. But yeah, there's been plenty going on for the Bills, and just that injury report, it's not getting any smaller as the season goes on. So hopefully healthy enough against the Denver Broncos in what should be a great matchup. Now, listen, let's before we talk about some of the activations that took place, let's give a shout out to our friends at Anchor Bar. Always appreciate their support. Again, maybe you're somebody that's traveling to Denver for the game, and if you are, I'm so jealous, and be loud and proud out there for the matchup on Saturday afternoon. But listen, maybe you're going to be in Buffalo or one of the other locations where there's an Anchor Bar, and you can stop in there to watch the game today. Anchor Bar, it's the home of the original Buffalo chicken wing. It's a place to watch the Bills, the Sabres, any of your favorite sports teams. And you can go to anchorbar.com to see all the locations, also to get info for online ordering. Anchor Bar original buffalo wings. They're fresh, never frozen, jumbo, high-quality wings. They've got 24 varieties of sauces and rubs that you can choose from. And listen, maybe you want to get something to go with your wings. They've got pizza, they've got burgers, they've got sandwiches, salads, all kinds of different things that you can choose from. And they've got 16 locations with 3 new spots in Tucson, Arizona, Frisco, Texas, Raleigh, North Carolina. And again, my weekly pitch, Anchor Bar. Let's add one here in Albany, New York. That would be fantastic. So big shout out to everybody at Anchor Bar. Thank you for the support this week and all season of everything we do here at the Overreaction Sports Network. So listen, let's talk about the activations. Like I was saying, this is the first game this week where you have this information because the Bills are the 4:30 game. They had to make that designation the day before. If they were playing in the 8 p.m. game tonight, we wouldn't have that information yet because they wouldn't have to do it until just a few hours before kickoff. But this gives a little bit of insight into where things might be. So roster moves that were announced on Friday afternoon. The Bills have activated wide receiver Curtis Samuel and defensive tackle Ed Oliver from injured reserve, and elevated wide receiver Mecole Hardman Jr. and running back Frank Gore Jr. from the practice squad. So, right, a little bit of insight here. We talked about Ty Johnson with his ankle injury on the report that we had just before the break there. And, we are not expecting then, I guess, to see Ty Johnson if they have elevated Frank Gore Jr. I mean, listen, maybe it's something he tests the ankle out before kickoff, before, obviously they have to make a final decision to see if he's good to go. But the fact that we saw him in a walking boot last week, that he did not practice 2 days this week, put in a limited practice yesterday, on Thursday, I should say. I look at this more. Frank Gore Jr. will probably be active for the Buffalo Bills once again this weekend. When it comes to Mecole Hardman Jr. and then with the activation of Curtis Samuel, so unfortunate for Gabe Davis and Tyrell Shavers to both go out with the ACL injuries last week, right? And they are important to the Buffalo Bills offense, more specifically when it comes to the run game. Just do a fantastic job blocking for James Cook. But in addition to that, like, we've seen these guys make catches. We've seen that they have a rapport with Josh Allen, and you certainly hate to see them go down in a playoff game. So now for the Bills, right? And it's not like, when you talk about Curtis Samuel, you talk about Mecole Hardman Jr. These are not two players that fit the same kind of mold of a Gabe Davis and a Tyrell Shavers, right? Those bigger, more physical wide receivers that, might be known more for their blocking than their pass catching. These are two guys that bring a bit of a speed element, don't relatively bring that size, maybe can get some separation. Mecole Hardman Jr., we know that he's someone that has playoff experience from his time with the Kansas City Chiefs. And again, maybe he can provide another vertical threat for the Buffalo Bills if needed. For Curtis Samuel, right? I mean, coming towards 2 full seasons after signing as a free agent, it has been an underwhelming signing to say the least. And I don't think anyone on listening to the show today is going to disagree with that. But if he can put together a good showing against the Broncos in the playoffs, I think myself included and all Buffalo Bills fans will be singing his praises. And knowing that here's a guy that has had success in the NFL in the past, and let's see what he can do in this matchup. Finally, with Ed Oliver, I was really surprised to see that he was activated. I was happy to see that he was back practicing, but listen, he's only played 3 games this season. When you think about the ramp up through mandatory minicamp and OTAs and training camp and the preseason and just everything as players kind of get up to speed, he's been on the shelf for a long period of time this season. Am I excited to see that he's back on the active roster? 100%, right? This team is better when Ed Oliver is playing. You just look at that and say, like, okay, is he even going to be active? Is he going to be able to play? Limited snap counts, I would expect. What is that going to look like? So I was pleasantly surprised. I was listening to Dr. Kyle Trimble from Banged Up Bills. He was on with Joe Marino on his Locked Up Bills appearance that he makes each and every week. And he said, the recovery for Oliver was like 11 weeks from his injury, right? The torn bicep. And you kind of look at that and you think to yourself, okay, 11 weeks, what would be normal? And he had said that he came back in about half the time necessary from that type of an injury. He did note that J.J. Watt had a similar recovery time back in 2019 when he made the return to play against the Bills in the playoffs. So maybe for Ed Oliver, we will see. But as I mentioned, a pleasant surprise to see him back and ready to go this week. So, we mentioned before, Damar Hamlin back practicing but not activated. And, of course, we're looking at the safety position this week with Jordan Poyer going out last weekend against the Jacksonville Jaguars. And it was Jordan Hancock that stepped in for him. And, as you would expect from a 5th-round rookie that probably wasn't, getting any first-team reps in preparation for last weekend's matchup, he was somebody that the Jaguars offense, they looked to kind of pick on just a little bit. And listen, I don't say this in a bad way. Like, he looked like a 5th-round rookie. I, like many, was surprised that Cam Lewis was not the one who was on the field once Poyer went down. Certainly has experience playing safety for the Bills, more NFL experience, kind of a bit of a chess piece for the team, and that you've seen him play in dime packages as the backup nickel and different pieces. So, I wondered, like, were they saving Cam Lewis because what if something happened with Taron Johnson, or what if we needed to go to a dime situation? But that wasn't really the case. So as we look to the game taking place against the Broncos, in some ways I'm hoping Cam Lewis gets the start. And I say that from an experience standpoint and what we've seen him do before. But I don't know if it's going to be him or Jordan Hancock. Again, Damar Hamlin not activated to the 53-man roster. That was part of the discussion earlier this week, but you can take that off the table. And certainly let's see what happens at the safety position later today. Probably the biggest question. I mean, everyone, right, like last week talking about Josh Allen, that ridiculous conversation around his legacy and all those types of pieces. I mean, he kind of put all that to bed last week with his performance and just like at least the national talking heads and whatever that is. But of course, you talk about the injury report, right? And I've got it open here, like the foot, the knee, the right finger, like, all right, at this point of the season, like nobody's at 100%. But, for him to make as many trips to the medical tent last week as he did, you just have to ask yourself, how healthy is Josh Allen? Now, smart game plan last week. Looked like he was not trying to do too much, at least in the pass game, right, where he's not standing back there holding onto the ball, taking big hits where he doesn't need to, utilizing Khalil Shakir in the passing game, right? 12 targets, 12 receptions, nothing, ridiculous when it comes to the total yards for him on 12 receptions, but almost an extension of the run game. And as you see that take place, but, you have to ask yourself, how healthy is Josh? What is that going to look like? We know that this is a vaunted Denver Broncos defense, and let's see what can happen. But when I say how healthy it is funny, right? Like, I mean, in his weekly press appearances, like Josh is always just going to say, like, yeah, I'm good, nothing to talk about here, good to go. So it will be interesting to see just how mobile maybe he looks from those kind of first few snaps taking place in this game, just what Josh looks like and how healthy he is. I mean, we all have the expectations that playoff Josh will be there and that he'll put together a great game. But along those same lines, I'm really curious to see how he looks, based on just many hits, and not how many hits, I shouldn't say that, because he wasn't like he was taking hits in the pocket, but in the run game, right, kind of hyperextend the knee, on the follow through with the hand, with the right finger, the foot injury that's been lingering, all of those pieces. You just hope that he's able to put together a great game as you do each and every game. For the Bills last weekend against Jacksonville, the run game was not something that got going. And, so much of it fell on the pass game and the play of Josh Allen, him having to be effective when it came to those tush-push type of situations. And can the Bills get the run game? Can they have a bounce back against the Broncos? Certainly a great showing last year in the playoffs. But again, right, when you talk about game planning, Denver coming off of a bye, maybe, initial time to prepare what that all looks like. But it was not the best showing from James Cook last week. And it wasn't, I don't look at it and say like, oh, that was his fault. Like, you knew that the Jaguars had the top run defense in the NFL. And he was, when I say effective enough, right? You didn't have those big negative plays. You didn't have those pieces. Yeah, maybe it's only a 2 or 3 yard run, but listen, being in 2nd and 8 or 2nd and 7 is hell of a lot better than being in 2nd and 11 or 2nd and 10. So I mean, that's obvious, but as you go through with this, I can look at it and say, like, this can be a bounce back game for James Cook. The way the Buffalo Bills offensive line is built and how they can match up with the Denver Broncos defensive line, certainly a size advantage there for the Buffalo Bills. And let's see what James can do. Again, you don't really see him have 2 mediocre performances in a row. And if, Josh Allen is dealing with his injuries still, if they can establish the run game, certainly that can open up things in the pass. And listen, yeah, you're banged up at wide receiver. I mean, that kind of goes without being said. So whether it's Khalil Shakir or Brandon Cooks or Keon Coleman or, yes, Curtis Samuel and Mecole Hardman, whatever it may be, like, establishing that run game and James Cook getting off to a good start will make everything easier when it comes to the pass. So final thing here, and I know I'm kind of a little bit all over the place today, but, games today, I'm a little bit amped up, as I'm sure you are as well. Who is it that's going to step up for the Bills? There's the obvious, of course, when we talk about Josh Allen, when we talk about James Cook, that goes without being said. But there's 3 names that I jotted down to talk to you about today. First is Matt Milano. Matt Milano was a difference maker last year when the Bills played the Denver Broncos, almost used as a bit of a spy on quarterback Bo Nix, who we know can be mobile, can get out of the pocket, can make some plays with his legs. And Milano proved to be a difference maker for the Buffalo Bills defense. When I look at him, I realize, right, is, some wear and tear over the years with some of the injuries that he's faced. But Milano, in my opinion, still the smartest player on the Buffalo Bills defense. Let's see what he can do. And I look to him to certainly be somebody that can step up in this matchup. Talked about Brandon Cooks, right? Like, listen, I'm still a little peeved from last week. I don't know how that catch was overturned, but that's, holding on to that from the past is neither here nor there. He certainly made up for it with the great catch that he had in the 4th quarter drive that led to the winning score for the Buffalo Bills. But, there's only going to be so much that you can get from Khalil Shakir when you think of, like, his performance last week and the way the Buffalo Bills have been using him. When you talk about someone like Brandon Cooks, like what he can bring to the offense, what he's done so far, truly being that vertical threat, I'm excited to see what he can do. And I think in this type of matchup will give him an opportunity, he might just get loose for like 1 or 2 catches. I'm not saying for a lot, but as you saw last week, it's that one catch that is truly makes a big difference in what the team can do, getting some chunk yardage I think he's a guy that can step up for the Bills today. Next one, Joey Bosa. I did not think it was a good game for Joey Bosa last weekend against Jacksonville when it came to containing the run. Too many times I felt like he just kind of was out of position, and it certainly showed. And for whatever reason, the Jaguars got away from the running game. That's fine with me. But kind of along those lines, I look for him to have a bounce back game and to be able to step up. The final thing for me, right, and I think is Bills fans, it's become an afterthought, but it certainly won't today. You know, we talk about Curtis Samuel and how that signing just hasn't been what you need it to be. Talk about Brandon Cooks, how he can step up. But when you look at this roster, you're going to see a lot of Keon Coleman on the field today, and he's going to have an opportunity to step up in a number of different facets. And one in the run game, like you talk about the blocker that Gabe Davis and Terrell Shavers is, Keon Coleman will need to be that guy. Brandon Cooks and Khalil Shakir, they can do some of that, but certainly for him to fill in for those two guys that are integral piece to the Buffalo Bills run game as a blocking wide receiver, he will need to step up in that fashion. But yeah, he also needs to step up as a pass catcher today too. You talk about establishing the run, and that is fine, but you're going to see a lot of Keon Coleman on the field. And it's certainly been an up and down season. And I say up and down because up, right? You think that week 1 game against the Baltimore Ravens, him going for 120 some yards, truly helping to provide a spark for what was a fantastic comeback to kind of where things are today, with him being a healthy scratch for multiple weeks, for him, being sat for a game as part of disciplinary reasons. Like, we talked about it before with Curtis Samuel, right? Like, gosh, such an underwhelming signing. Is this the opportunity where it can kind of step up and something really good can come from this and be that kind of launch pad towards something forward? Same thing for Keon Coleman. I mean, and it is by necessity this week. It's not just, you're playing a smaller number of snaps and you're going to get an opportunity to step up and make something happen. Like, no, you are going to be on the field. He is going to have that chance. And if you have an opportunity to kind of ball out and to seize this for Keon Coleman, this matchup with the Denver Broncos, this is certainly it. So let's see if the young guy can make some plays today. The Buffalo Bills certainly need him in addition to everybody else. So listen, as we go through with all of this, right, guys that can step up in addition to Coleman, Bosa, Cooks, Milano, things you're keeping an eye on. I mean, listen, no surprise here. Josh Allen, James Cook, the Buffalo Bills' 2 best players on offense. Let's see if they can get going. What's going to happen at the safety position? Is it going to be Cam Lewis? Is it going to be Jordan Hancock? And of course, hey, Ed Oliver is back. Let's see what the big fella can do. We know he's got to be champing at the bit to get going. And let's see if he can make a difference for the Buffalo Bills defense in this tough matchup with the Denver Broncos. So listen, I'm going to wrap things up for now. But before I do that, make sure you subscribe, make sure you comment, make sure you share whenever you can, not just this episode of the walkthrough, but right, everything that we do here at the Overreaction Sports Network. Whether your favorites are, Joe Miller, or if it's Zig Fracassi and what he's doing with Jerry Ostrowski, if it's Dan Freddy and the Mafia Bets show, the Off Tackle show with John Fina. We just appreciate you guys tuning in each and every week. We're having a lot of fun with each of you, and let's see that we can kind of keep this going and maybe for our Buffalo Bills to get another victory over the Denver Broncos. So big shout out to Anchor Bar. Thank you for the support, of course, everybody at FanDuel. I'm going to get out of here for now. Thanks for tuning in. And as always, go Bills.